but continued creeping along till he reached the enclosing palisade. At the foot of the fence the manticore, according to the habits of his kind, began to seek a subterranean retreat, and coming to the opening of a mole track, entered it at once. Benedict quite thought he had now lost sight of his prize altogether, but his surprise was very great when he found that the aperture was at least 2 feet wide, and that it led into a gallery which would admit his whole body. His momentary feeling of astonishment, however, gave way to his eagerness to follow up the hexapod, and he continued burrowing like a ferret. Without knowing it, he actually passed under the palisading and was now beyond. The mole track, in fact, was a communication that had been made between the interior and exterior of the enclosure. Benedict had obtained his freedom, but so far from caring in the least for his liberty, he continued totally absorbed in the pursuit upon which he had started. He watched with unflagging vigilance, as it was only when the hexapod expanded its wings as if for flight that he prepared to imprison it in the hollow of his hand. All at once, however, he was taken by surprise. A whiz and a whir, and the prize was gone. Disappointed rather than despairing, Benedict raised himself up and looked about him. Before long the old black speck was again flitting just above his head. There was every reason to hope that it would ultimately settle once more upon the ground. But on this side of the palisade there was a large forest a little way to the north, and if the manticora were to get into that mass of foliage, all hope of keeping it in view would be lost, and there would be an end of the proud expectation of storing it in the tin box, to be preserved among the rest of the entomological wonders. After a while the insect descended to the earth. It did not rest at all, nor crawl as it had done previously, but made its advance by a series of rapid hops. This made the chase for the near-sighted naturalist a matter of great difficulty. He put his face as close to the ground as possible, and kept starting off and stopping and starting off again, with his arms extended like a swimming frog, continually making frantic clutches to find as continuously that his grasp had been eluded. After running till he was out of breath, and scratching his hands against the brushwood and the foliage till they bled, he had the mortification of feeling the insect dash past his ear with what might be a defiant buzz, and finding that it was out of sight for ever. "Ungrateful hexapod!" he cried in dismay. "I intended to honour you with the best place in my collection." He knew not what to do, and could not reconcile himself to the loss. He reproached himself for not having secured the manticora at the first. He gazed at the forest, till he persuaded himself he could see the coveted insect in the distance, and seized with a frantic impulse, exclaimed, "I will have you yet!" He did not even yet realize the fact that he had gained his liberty, but heedless of everything except his own burning disappointment, and at the risk of being attacked by natives or beset by wild beasts, he was just on the very point of dashing into the heart of the wood, when suddenly a giant form confronted him. As suddenly a giant had seized him by the nape of the neck, and lifting him up, carried him off with apparently as little exertion as he could himself have carried off his hexapod. For that day at least, Cousin Benedict had lost his chance of being the happiest of entomologists. End of part the second. Chapter 15. Recording by Alex Lander, Davis, California. www.alexetolander.com